All right. Here we go, back again on the other side of the coin.
All right, we are back again on the other side of the coin, and I got my main man RJ here. I haven't seen him since we became European champions. He's been busy partying as well. He was actually out watching the match on that night where there was epic parties in Sydney, and it's finally good to have him back on the channel and in the swing of things again. First of all, my man, how you doing, RJ?
Champions of Europe, you know who we are. We know who we are. That's all I can say. You know what, Miz, as I was just saying to you before we got started, I've finally got my voice back after 4 or 5 days. Seriously, short of being in Portugal, that was one of the most unreal experiences I've ever had in my life. And I'm not being dramatic. It was unbelievable. Single-handedly, top 5 moment.
Were you with Sydney Supporters Club group? Like, which bar was it? It was a particular bar in the city, right?
It was a place called the Sporting Globe in Darling Harbour, and there was about 300-400 of us in there. And I'm not sure if any of the live chat or you guys saw online, mate. The amount of people crammed there from start to finish, from the pre-game right through to the post-match stuff with Optus Sports. Yeah, it was just a surreal sort of experience. It was.
Optus Sports covered the party, and they then posted it. It looked unbelievable, man. I feel like I missed out big time, but then again, I wanted to do all of this thing and the review and all of that. So that was a different experience.
We'll do it another time, mate. We'll 100% do it another time.
Yeah. We'll definitely, and maybe next time we can even do the review over there. Like take the laptop over there and maybe do the review over there. You never know. That might actually turn out to be, and get the fans involved as well live. That would be very interesting as well. I think something to think about, definitely. Live chat, thank you so much for joining. As always, you're always buzzing. We've got quite a few people already on. Smash the like button, helps the channel out a lot. We are very close to 5,000 subscribers. So you guys all should be very happy to get this channel to the level where it is. I think I'm literally 2 subscribers away. So if you're here for the first time, subscribe, get me to 5,000. That's going to be a milestone. And continue supporting. And hopefully you keep enjoying the content that's going to come up. Today, we're going to talk about 2 big things. First of all, we're going to talk about the Thomas Tuchel contract extension, which we have to have a quick conversation. That's the breaking news at the moment. And secondly, we will do the player ratings for the season. We haven't done that in this channel yet. We did the season review yesterday with Con and PYS, as some of you guys would have seen it. Today, RJ and I will go through and do the player ratings. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some very, very good conversation. But first of all, as I said, RJ, big breaking news literally over the last hour or so. Thomas Tuchel contract extension till 2024. I think we all saw this coming. I mean, this was already, I think, decided as soon as he got his top 4. And even before that, to be honest, the way he sort of galvanized our team, changed our team, the structure, the confidence was oozing as soon as he came in. You could see that this man was always going to get an extension. So finally, this has happened. RJ, how are you feeling about it?
It's quite funny because obviously it's great news. The guy has come in, done a wonder job, and led us to our 2nd European trophy. But I kind of think Chelsea's a unique sort of club where we don't seem to do well under stability. It's never been our thing. We seem to be this funny club where the more chaotic the environment and the more pressure you're under, the better we seem to do. So on one hand, I'm thinking, absolutely fantastic. He deserves it, deserves the contract extension, deserves the pay rise, and he deserves the right to be able to get some stability for his family because they're moving over to London, etc., and setting up their livelihoods. For what I'm hoping and what I'm starting to see from Fabrizio Romano is that this will have a domino effect in terms of other players like Thiago Silva contract extension, N'Golo Kante, perhaps now in the next couple of months they said will sign on. So what I think it does do is beyond having him commit to us, it also helps us maintain the level of attractiveness for other prospective players to want to join and play under the modern day maestro Tuchel. So absolutely huge news for us. Yeah,
man, you're right. This will be the trigger of hopefully, as you said, Silva come through and a better sort of agreement with Kante as well. So some good times to come as well. And I think Andres Christensen, he's looking for a contract extension too. So hopefully there'll be some development there. But I mean, for the first time, I'm hoping and I'm praying, RJ, that we do have a manager that we can keep for a little while. I know in the modern era, to think of something in the caliber of Sir Alex Ferguson is insane. I mean, it's not something that happens. But you look at Liverpool, Klopp, what's that? 6 seasons now, I believe? Close to, or 5, 6?
Yeah, I think
maybe
so.
6 seasons. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's quite, longer than Chelsea, that's for sure.
Yeah, longer than Chelsea, that's for sure. Yeah, even Pep Guardiola has just finished his 4th season, so he'll come to his 5th season at Man City. I would love to see that level of at least time given to Thomas Tuchel, but I do want to put a caveat, RJ, and I want to see what you have to say about this. In Chelsea, we all know the way you get the longevity is you got to keep winning. If you're not winning and if you're having a very, very poor season, like I've said it, if Thomas Tuchel ends up being somewhere around 10th or 9th next season in December, we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. So what's your thoughts? Like, I mean, should Chelsea continue that manner or should we not and just let Thomas Tuchel have a bit of a run? Or do you think this is Chelsea Football Club? If you do screw up, you're going to end up going.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because normally it's Chelsea's run off the operating model of we're in the business of winning, and if you don't get us the results, we'll find someone who can. It's not about being patient. We're not Arsenal. We're not going to hang around in mediocrity world. But all jokes aside, what I think the difference here, hopefully, what Thomas Tuchel has shown is that within a mid-season, come into the situation and help salvage what was fast becoming a dire sort of season. He's helped turn it all around, got to an FA Cup final, achieved top 4 and won the Holy Grail. So if anything, what he might show the board is that he's someone, imagine if you give him the full backing, he can do wonders for the club. He might curb the trend of this trigger-happy board and Roman to say, I've already won you stuff with little to no preparation time. Even if we do experience a few rocky roads along the way, he declared legend. But look, I think what we will see is it just really depends on the degree of difficulty. So if we really start slow and we're so far off the pace by the time we hit that December period, which is what, unfortunately, Super Frank, that's when it all unraveled for him, unfortunately, because he had that 17-game unbeaten streak. It's hard to remember, but he was going great for a period of time. We were in the top 2, top 3. We were right at the top. But then it got real dangerous real fast for him and he lost control of it, unfortunately. But for Tuchel, he's got runs on the board. He's won the Champions League, so he has some capital in his bank. But we know, Roman, just because you've had past success, that's not an indicator of future sort of safety for you. So we saw it with Di Matteo. I dare say, with all due respect to Di Matteo, it's not the same in terms of what Tuchel has shown us. But when the rubber hits the road, I believe we will give him some lenience and he will get some safety and some respect because of his achievement. But if it's not going to go well for him, then, I don't think they're going to keep holding on to last season's Champions League glory. But, hey, let's not get too down about it. We're the European champions. We're only going to get stronger and better.
Absolutely, man. I mean, at the end of the day, things are good at the moment. I will say one thing, though, RJ. It is very, very important, RJ, that this particular momentum that we're in, under Thomas Tuchel, the UCL glory, let's not forget it. At the end of the day, we albeit Spurs helped us out, but we still got to the top 4. We got to the FA Cup final. Obviously, now he gets himself the contract extension. We need to continue with this momentum, RJ, in this summer window. I feel like Thomas Tuchel deserves to have a very good summer window, deserves to get the kind of players that he wants. It has to be, it can't be completely what the club wants. It has to be some part where it gets, negotiated with Thomas Tuchel as well, consulted with Thomas Tuchel as well. So I feel like we've seen it previously, RJ, where managers have had very good seasons, but then they weren't backed properly enough in the summer, and then it's gone sour the second season, most notably Antonio Conte. He had a very good season, won the Premier League, then did not get backed, and then, oh my days, was it what a downfall from the top. So I'm hoping, RJ, that this is one thing that we do look after Thomas Tuchel, and that way that will set us nicely for next season.
Do you know what? You know what, though, Miz? That's an interesting point, because I was listening to a few people talk about this, and the one thing that I've noticed with our club is that over recent seasons, we've tended to buy players that are quite attached to a manager. Like, I'm looking at the Sarri days with Jorginho. I'm looking at in Kante. Even though he didn't get all of his preferred players, we seem to, as a club, if we can't buy the cream of the crop, we've tended to buy these second or third tier type players just for adding quantity over quality. But also, we're not, until last season, I felt we haven't really bought players that the club looks at strategically over the 5 to 10 year period. Like, it's always been sort of players that have a very strong attachment to a manager. And because that manager doesn't have a long shelf life, all of a sudden the next person's coming in and having to work with a player that fits that specific manager's style. So they're not really, you know what I mean? So it's really the board and the club have got to be really smart about how they go about buying players and making sure that they're manager agnostic. So if Tuchel was to go, the next manager can come and work with this player in the same way, that they're not just going to be super attached to that manager, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100% understood. Football style, this comment here, I just want to quickly address this. Miz, what do you think if we don't buy a striker? Football style, I'm not going to go through the whole discussion here today because I do want to get into the ratings. But if you are keen on that answer, check out the video that we did yesterday with Con and PYS. The first probably about 20 minutes, we talked about the whole striker situation. So that pretty much covers that. I don't want to keep repeating that. So if you do want that, you can check that out after this stream. RJ, let's get straight into this, man. We've got quite a few things to go through, especially obviously, the main part of this particular show, which is the ratings. I'm pretty sure we'll spark some interesting debate whilst we do these ratings as well. Let's start from the back. Let's talk about, before we actually do the ratings, thing, I do want to have some house rules so that the live chat, that you guys know as well, you don't start getting upset about some of these ratings. I'm pretty sure you will get upset some point, but at least you understand the rules that I've got. So I'm just going to quickly read it out. The way I've got the rules here, I've actually got it in the description. So if you guys want to see in the YouTube description, I've got it written there. And let me know in the live chat whether you agree on that description as well or what you would change. But pretty much what I've got is 5 is an average, so not bad, not good. It's purely an average season. Above 7.5, I think that's an exceptional season. You're starting to have an exceptional season of above 7.5. 9 or above, you've had a superstar season. You've actually killed it. Do you know what I mean? Below 5 is a stinker. So that's pretty much what the rating is, RJ. That's what we're going with, and hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's start with Mendy. I think that's a good one to start with. I'll kick things off, and then I'll see what you have to say, RJ. I think for a first season, the number of clean sheets and how the impact he's had in our team when he's played to the defense, I think all of that has a mega value. For me, I would give him somewhere around 8 out of 10 because the clean sheets and the commanding, of his box, and the impact he's had to the total team when he doesn't play and when he plays has been immense. But don't want to forget the fact, RJ, there was a time when just in that January-December period when Frank Lampard was struggling, he actually had some poor games. Everton, the way he rushed out, Leeds as well, even though we ended up winning against Leeds. Yeah. The penalty he rushed out. Wolves, I felt like he could have saved one of the shots. Maybe I'm being harsh, but there was that moment where there was a little bit of uncertainty there, but then once Thomas Tuchel came on, I thought he was fantastic. For me, I would give an 8 out of 10 because I do have to see the whole season. I can't just look at it just the second half of the season. Some of the people in the live chat are saying 9, some 10, which is pretty crazy. 10 means you've had a perfect season. I don't think anyone in our team had a perfect season. But yes, a lot of people are actually saying 9s. But Ajay, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I understand the logic. For me, I'd go in between the 8 and 9 because I think he's definitely, we all agree he's massively overperformed. And part of these ratings, I think maybe one of the ground rules we should establish is there consideration of what the budget was we spent on them? Because, you know, I think he's performed above what we expected of him. Like, he wasn't like we paid 100 million for him and therefore he should be pulling out 8s and 9s every week. This guy was brought in to give some competition to Kepa, and if he's done any good, he'll keep his place. But overall, you did highlight a couple of games where he was a little bit rocks and diamonds, especially with his attempted Cruyff turns at times, which gave me quite a heart attack. But more often
and
than
also
not,
the Carabao Cup against Spurs, RJ, that penalty shootout wasn't the greatest for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think, look, on the balance of things, though, he had a pretty instrumental role in shoring up our defence. And the games, obviously, we won the Champions League, right? So that's an obvious
100%.
thing. On the way to the Champions League, his role, especially against Real Madrid's second leg, where a couple of those saves against Karim Benzema, a different goalkeeper doesn't save them. I don't care what anyone says, and all of a sudden we're not celebrating this Champions League. But overall, I wouldn't debate too much. My honest rating, I'd probably go 8.5 if we're going in halves, but if we're not,
I'm going with 8.5 as well. I think. Look, some of the live chats clear on the 9, but for me, 8.5 is still very, very solid season. I mean, you know, 9. I mean, is there an argument for a 9, RJ?
I'll read you some stats. So I believe
he did break some records, didn't he? He broke some records, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely he had a very strong season, mate. So I think, you know, Champions League, according to Transfer Market, 12 Champions League appearances, 3 goals conceded, 9 clean sheets, 31 Premier League appearances, 25 goals conceded, and I think it was 16 clean sheets. I've got to double check that one. But either way, all phenomenal stats considering the state of the club at the time. And it's not even just the clean sheets declared, because look, if we want to be honest, really look at Ederson for Man City. Ederson won technically the Golden Glove because obviously got the most clean sheets. But is he only getting those clean sheets because Man City dominated all the games they played and he had to do very little in the process? So, it's a bit misleading, that clean sheet stat on its own. But for Mendy, I think he hardly put a foot wrong. If someone was to turn around and say, I'd give him a 9, the only thing is, would you give him a 9 relative to some other players in the team? That's the only thing.
That's the thing, RJ. That's why I'm a bit reluctant, because if you set a 9 for Mendy, what do you start giving Mount? Do you know what I mean? Mount was the player of the season. You can't give Mount a 10. That's why I'm hoping the live chat just calms down a little bit. That
maybe it's a moderation process. Maybe
that's right. Because okay, you know what? For argument's sake, RJ, let's go with a 9, and we can come back and then we start fixing. Because I don't want to have a situation where Mendy's a 9 and then Mount's a 10. I don't think any player in our team has hit a 10. Do you know what I mean? So, and at the same time, we can't have a lot of 9.5s, because people need to realize that it wasn't just a season under Thomas Tuchel. There was a season before Thomas Tuchel as well. So we need to consider that. But okay, we'll go with a 9 for the time being, and then we'll see what, you know, if we need to adjust that by any chance. Shall we do Kepa, or should we come back for Kepa, RJ? We'll come back for Kepa, yeah.
Yeah, because to be honest with you, I think one of the things is how many games has he played to really give him an assessment. Like, he was a bit of a stopgap for most of the season. Did a good job when he was there, but it's almost like when you do the player game ratings and they come on for 10 minutes at the end, It's like you get a not rated figure. So I don't know.
Yeah, I say let's wait for the for Kepa. By the way, someone's just commented 5K subs. Congratulations, Liz. I didn't have a look, but thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. We've just hit 5K, which is brilliant. I'm absolutely excited. We'll talk about that at the end. We'll come back to Kepa. Let's go with Azpilicueta. RJ, your thoughts first on this one, and then I'll go with mine.
Yeah, overall, he was a busy boy. He played 26 games in Premier League, 11 Champions League games, and 4 FA Cup games. Not bad for someone who was thought to be getting past it.
Yeah.
But I have to say, his leadership was constant throughout the season. I did think he had a couple of occasions where he looked a little bit off the pace, and I thought he was going to lose his spot to Reece James as the season wore on.
Yeah.
But he sort of hung around, didn't he? And then he had that right wing back sort of renaissance when Tuchel thought, we're going to use this guy like a bit of an annoying pest that just keeps annoying all of the defenses. But overall, a versatile player, quite inspiring. I would give him, like he tends to normally be, a straight 7, or I'd make a 7.5 at best.
I was thinking 7 as well from the top of my mind. He did not feature that much under Frank Lampard. So up until probably January, when Thomas Tuchel came in and reinstated the captain back in, he really didn't see much football. Do you know what I mean? So he literally just played half the season because, let's be honest, it all started from him from January. But then also, look, I've got to be honest, he's been good. He's been good under Thomas Tuchel. Always. I don't think there's been a disastrous performance, but I think you're right, RJ. There has been times where the pace seemed a bit lethargic. When we wanted a little bit more sort of pace from the right side, we kind of had to shift him and, Reece James around a little bit. I think 7 is a good sort of score to give. So we'll lock in 7. I think that's a fair enough score here. I wouldn't mind at all. And looks like live chat is somewhat agreeing. Some are saying 6.5, some are saying 7, which is fair enough. Let's go to Thiago Silva. I'll kick this off. For me, Thiago Silva under Frank Lampard was very good as well. There was that odd game against West Brom, which wasn't that great, but he was very instrumental in defense for Frank Lampard. Probably one of the very few players, along with Mason Mount, that actually cared when Frank Lampard was going through the rough times. And then, of course, under Thomas Tuchel, he was a main player, but injuries meant that he did not get to play as many games that he should have played. But he was definitely instrumental. He was someone just like Mendy who provided immense impact in our game from the middle. The build-up was a lot smoother with Silva in the middle, and obviously when Christensen came as well. So for me, I'd actually give it 8, and then looks like live chat is agreeing with the 8 as well. RJ, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, to me, it's the intangibles he brings. He straight away, because he was one of those players, one of the few players that was consistent under both managers this season. So it's not like a couple of other quality defenders that had a bit of a mini resurrection when Tuchel came in. He was consistent, aside from the West Brom debacles under both regimes, funnily enough. So you can't blame Lampard or you can't blame Tuchel. It's just West Brom are our kryptonite this season for some odd reason. But overall, Thiago Silva had a very vital role. And I think an 8 would be fair because he played 23 games in the Premier League, scored 2 goals, had 8 Champions League appearances, 2 FA Cup appearances. Not bad for a 36-year-old on a free transfer. So, yeah, 8's a good result.
And this is a very...
And I agree with that, Declared. I'd agree with that from Declared. Intangibles, that's what I was referring to.
Exactly. That's a very good comment. He made other defenders better. I think that in itself has some value as well. So let's lock in 8. I think that's a fair enough result there. Live chat once again seems to agree with that assessment as well. While we were at it, might as well just do Andres Christensen here. You go first, and then we'll see what I have to say about Christensen.
Yeah, to me, and without jumping into Rudiger world, I would describe these 2 players, but we'll start with Christensen first, as a tale of 2 halves, if you will, of the season. So under Lampard, let's be clear up front. With Christensen, he's always been a technically strong player, very smooth on the ball, purely good defender, what he used to get criticised a lot of was his mental strength, his physicality at times, and that's what often let him down, and some decision making. So when I look at him, even though he had a fantastic resurrection under Tuchel, there were a couple of occasions under both regimes. So firstly, the first game against Liverpool, got himself red carded with a rugby tackle on Mane last minute. We were down to 10 men. We lost a game in the second half because of that, to be fair. And then after that, he was fantastic in the back three under Tuchel, but also was responsible for the first goal conceded against Man City. He hurt himself, he overstretched, done his hamstring, and was out for a few weeks. But that's being a little bit harsh on him because for the most part, under Tuchel, he was flawless.
Supreme.
So I think, look, as a season as a whole, I'm inclined to give him between a 7 and a 7.5. But I look at the stats here, 17 Premier League games, 7 CL games, 3 FA Cup games, 3 yellow cards and 1 red card. I don't know, like, do you notch him up half a point because of him coming back in a pressure situation in a Champions League final in a back three against the most dangerous attack in Europe? Maybe. But I'd give him a 7 as a whole, but I can understand a 7.5, but no more than that for me.
This is how I look at it, RJ. Let's assess his time under Frank Lampard, and that was shocking under Frank Lampard, right? He had the red card against Liverpool, then he sort of disappeared. Frank did not fancy him one bit. I also remember there was a match against Aston Villa under Frank Lampard, and he did not look that good. I think we conceded that goal off the back of him sort of getting himself injured with Grealish, and then that led to a goal. I remember it ended up being a goal. And as I said, he wasn't fancied. So if I look at under Frank Lampard, he probably got himself a 5, do you know what I mean? Or maybe even less, probably even a 4 during that time. And then under Thomas Tuchel, he completely resurrected his situation. Yes, you're right. The Man City was probably the one mistake that he's had, but he monumentally resurrected his situation. And then obviously every time Silva got himself injured, he got in and he looked after that absence. And in the final, once again, magical performance. So if I start him from 4 and then I bump him up to the resurrection, I'd probably give him around 7. I'd say that's a decent sort of score to give him. 7.5, I feel like, as you guys would have seen in the description, for me, 7.5 starts becoming exceptional. I don't know if he falls under the exceptional category because I can't forget what he did. You look at someone like Thiago Silva, we gave him an 8 because he was very good throughout. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a consistent performance. It wasn't as if he was poor.
And he scored some goals too, Miz. He scored some important goals, Silva.
Exactly. So for me, I would stick with a 7. I mean, can we agree with that, RJ?
Yeah, I think so. Just one minor shout out too. One thing that I think Christensen probably didn't get enough recognition was because he was injured in the back end of those last few games before the final. And as you noticed, that's when we had that really topsy-turvy form. So I dare say if he was available for some of those games, I think we probably would have been a little bit less pressure heading into that final. So it's a bit of a credit to him just how far he's come under Tuchel. But a 7's fair when you look at the season as a whole.
Exactly. I think you're right. Had he not been injured and he would have played, maybe he would have got himself more better performance in those matches, and maybe some of the, maybe he gets bumped up to 7.5. But I think 7's very decent still. It's a decent season. From where he was, as I said, he was probably a 4 under Frank Lampard. So getting himself into a 7 is fantastic. All right, this is where we're going to have a lot of fun because this is a bit of an enigma, Rudiger. You know what, RJ, I'm going to go with you first because I want to hold my thoughts and see what I have to say after what you say. So you go first on this one.
Okay. A similar theme again. He was the very much the forgotten man under Frank. I think under Lampard, he did have a few games, but there were some instances where I thought he probably didn't have his best outing, and we didn't see the same Rudiger that we saw under Tuchel under Frank. And Frank had to make some judgment calls. And at the time, let's also not forget, Thiago Silva was the immovable object. But next to him in the back four, Kurt Zouma, under Frank, was very strong in the back four.
Yeah.
Kurt Zouma was very good, and all of a sudden he became a victim of a relationship that Rudiger had with Tuchel, and Rudiger never looked back. And fair play, he was amazing. That second half of the season, if there wasn't a Chelsea Player of the Season award for the half of the season, Rudiger would get it.
Rudiger would get it, yeah.
In my opinion, and that's a full credit to him, just how far he's bounced back. Because I'm happy to put on the record, I thought him, Christensen, they're on the outer. Come season end, time to say goodbye. We need to move forward. But they've really shown us. I'm happy to eat my humble pie because he's done a phenomenal job. And who knows if this is just a byproduct of playing in a back three where he has a bit more comfort and less. He has more protection around him. But either way, in this system, he has flourished, and because he has flourished. When I compare the start of the season being a 4.5, and then his second part of the season being a 9.5, if we're going to give Christensen a 7, he deserves a 7.5 to an 8 based on that. But when I look at the season as a whole, I think an 8 might be too generous. So that's my opinion. I'd land on a 7.5, but keen to get your thoughts.
All right. Well, I hear you, my man. I definitely hear you. But I feel his impact, and I'm not discrediting Christensen one bit here, I felt his impact was far greater on that left centre-back position. For me, he was the standout defender under Thomas Tuchel. He brought back the grit. He brought back the, that aggression, the mongrel. Do you know what I mean? The way he took care of Luis Suarez, Real Madrid, even Man City in the final in the Champions League. Even in the Premier League, he was very, very, dynamic. And I think players started to feel that as well, that energy that he was creating. So, and I can't remember a mistake besides that one own goal, RJ. I honestly cannot remember a single mistake. And I actually remember big performances from Rudiger. I think he scored a goal as well in the against Leicester in the Premier League, which was a crucial match for us.
One goal in the Premier League, 19. So he's played 19 games in the Premier League, 11 in the Champions League, and 4 in the FA Cup. So he played most of the Champions League, tick, most of the FA Cup, tick, and only half of the Premier League. So that's why I'm thinking, can I give someone above 7.5 for only playing half the Premier League? That's my only thing. But then you say impact. His impact was phenomenal. So maybe this is one of those exceptions where you say, despite not playing enough, like the majority, like Mason Mount played 36 games in the Premier League. That's longevity.
Yeah.
But the impact of Rudiger in his 19 Premier League games was exceptional in the end. So look, if you have to twist my arm, I could probably get to an 8. But if you're the host, you're the 5K host. If you want to go above that, you overrule me, my man. Up to you.
And the other reason, and I want to be fair, you know me, Raja, I'm always fair. I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
But here's another little reason for you is that you take away Rudiger from that LCB position, and we are not the same. We are not the same under Thomas Tuchel anymore. I feel like we've tried Zouma there and it didn't look right. But if you take Andres Christensen out, it's not like we are missing anything because Silva comes in. If Silva's out, then Zouma has kind of done a bit of a job for us in the middle. So once again, I'm not discrediting any of those players, but I feel like Rudiger's impact is immense. For me, at least the minimum 8. I wouldn't go more than that because I do still need to remember under Frank Lampard, everyone's going to get suffered under Frank Lampard, bar probably Mason Mount. So it is what it is. We have to accept that. We can't just simply rate it on the basis of the half season. But for me, at least an 8. So we'll go with 8. I think
8's fair. Yeah.
I think 8 is definitely fair. I mean, if we're giving Silva an 8, I think Rudiger, who had an immense impact, definitely deserves an 8.
Agreed.
While we're at it, we might as well do Zouma. I'll go first on this one. I think Zouma, for me, as you said, under Frank Lampard was okay-ish, but under Frank Lampard, the defense still looked a little bit shoddy. And then under Thomas Tuchel, who barely featured, every now and then when he did feature, he had the odd game. I think for Atletico Madrid, he had a very good game. But overall, there were some mistakes. Southampton, there was mistakes. West Brom, everyone made mistakes, but he was one of them as well. I did not. I really think Zouma had regressed from last season. Declared's giving him a 3. Come on, man. That's disrespect. That's disrespect. But for me, I feel he has regressed, RJ, from last season. Last season, the way he finished off the season, he was immense. I would give him, honestly, probably a 6, maybe even a 5.5. 5.5 to a 6. Because I don't know, although I must admit, he has scored a lot of header goals under Frank Lampard. Absolutely. He was looking good. But defensively, we still had issues. We had issues. Even with Zouma, we had issues under Frank Lampard. So for me, it's either a 5.5 or a 6. What's your thoughts, RJ?
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, I thought he wasn't too bad for me under the back four with Silva to start with. I felt like some of those games in which the form got a bit rocky during that mid-December crunch period in early January, I think he was someone he is prone to the odd error, and he's someone that's not very silky on the ball, even though I thought he'd improved it. At the end of the day, he's played 24 Premier League games, scored 5 goals. He was basically our second or third highest goal scorer, which he's a defender at heart. So you say, well, that's not his primary job. But, at the end of the day, in the modern football world, a defender from set pieces scoring goals is invaluable. And the moment he got taken out of the team, that was an area of the pitch where we were lacking. We lost a genuine goal threat.
We lost goals.
We did, and we have to be balanced about that. But overall, since Tuchel took over, he never featured too much. He was in the centre of the back three, conceded our first goal, genuine goal from the Rudiger one, from that mistake against Minamino.
Yeah,
but then after that
was poor. Yeah. That was a poor.
It was poor, and that's that whole concentration lapse you get with Zouma at times. So I think, look, you're probably right. I think 5.5 may be a tad harsh. I'd still go a 6, given that he did still play 24 games and quite unique to score 5 goals as a defender, and we did lose his attacking threat. So I'd go a 6.
Yeah, look, there were some really, really good performances as well throughout. As I said, Atletico Madrid, I believe the second leg, he played in the middle of the park where he looked very good. But if I say last season, he was somewhere around, let's say, 7.5 to 8. This season's probably about. Yeah, he's regressed. He's definitely a 6. As I said, maybe even a 5.5. But as you said, RJ, I'm gonna back you on this one. You did put up the goals, and as soon as he was taken out, there was no more goals from the defenders. So
and you wonder if it's just a function as well, means of would he have regressed as much if Tuchel decided to stay in a back four? We will never know, but it's just a consideration. That's all.
100. I agree with that, man. All right, let's start looking at from the right side of things. Let's start with RJ. I'll go again first up. For me, this is a bit of a strange one. I can't really say he had a magnificent season, but at the same time, I don't think he had a poor season as well. I think he has developed from last season. That's for sure.
Definitely.
He has improved from last season. Defensively, he has become much aware, much more alert in terms of what's in and around him. Obviously, I still remember under Frank Lampard, the Leicester game, how Maddison sort of ghosted behind him and then snuck in when Vardy helped out Maddison. And there were the odd sort of games here and there for RJ like that. But for me, under Thomas Tuchel, he's been solid. He's been the mainstayer. He pretty much took over from Callum Hudson-Odoi. Callum Hudson-Odoi started becoming the right wing back, but then soon Thomas Tuchel kind of realized that, look, RJ probably gives me a better balance in terms of defense and offense. And let's be honest, there's a lot of crosses still that wasn't converted from him. He should have got a lot more assists than what he has. He scored that blinder of a goal in the first game against Brighton, that screamer that he scored.
Yeah, rocket, what a shot.
Absolute rocket. And then later on in the season, he started playing the RCB role because Thomas Tuchel started to see that maybe Azpilicueta doesn't have the legs, and maybe Azpi probably provides a little bit more up front. So bottom line, he's been a mainstay for Thomas Tuchel. So for me, I'd go with a 7. I think a 7. But what's your thoughts, RJ?
That was my initial gut feel. But what I wanted to say is that we mentioned Zouma regressed. James has definitely progressed because for a 21-year-old, 32 Premier League appearances, 1 goal, 2 assists, 10 Champions League appearances, wins the Champions League and does an absolute monster on Raheem, who never heard of him. But also, even in the FA Cup, 2 assists as well in 5 performances. So for a 21-year-old stepping up into that position and keeping the likes of Azpilicueta at bay, but also his versatility. So he wasn't just playing in the right wing back. He also had a bit of a go in the right centre back for a few games, and also was chipping in that centre mid DM role in the emergency situation. So I think, look, 7 was my gut feel, but given his longevity in terms of what he was able to, in terms of his expectation, I'd almost want to go 7.5, but I could definitely live with the 7.
I think I agree. You've convinced me. You've put on some very, very compelling. You've put on some compelling arguments there for RJ, and I think 7.5 is definitely probably the right sort of rating for him. As I said, 7.5 is exceptional, so that's pretty good.
Sure.
You know, live chat is saying 8. Some of the people are saying 8. Look, it's not too far away from an 8. So at the end of the day, 7.5 is still looked at as an exceptional sort of rating for me. So we'll come back to Cho. Cho's
high standards. Declared said we have high. We drive a hard bargain. We have high standards. Declared. We're Chelsea. You know?
Exactly. We'll hold on to the Cho situation. Let's go to Chilwell now. I'll let you start on Chilwell, RJ.
Well, for a player that was backed as Frank's signing compared to some of the other ones, I thought overall as a season, he continued to get better. I thought he had a bit of a rough patch in the mid part of the season, lost a bit of confidence. Alonso looked like he was going to become the new primary left wing back under Tuchel, who had a couple of decent games. But to Chilwell's credit, he won back his spot. And to be honest with you, I thought he was one of our more informed players towards the end of the season. So it's a shame. It's a shame for him that the season ended because he was getting better and better for us.
The trajectory was actually going higher.
Yeah, exactly. From a risk point of view, his outlook was very positive. So just some stats quickly again. 27 Premier League games. This is all according to the transfer market, by the way. 3 goals, 5 assists, 10 Champions League appearances, 1 goal, and 3 FA Cup appearances, which really he should have scored the equalising goal, but we won't go there. Overall, for a left back / left wing back, adjusting to 2 different managers, big price tag, I couldn't give him a score less than Reece James, to be honest with you. I'd go 7.5, but that's just my view.
I'd have to agree, and I may even, I'll put up an argument for maybe an 8, and I'll see what you have to say, RJ, and see what the live chat has to say as well.
Yeah.
For me, he's been a bit more bolder than Reece James going forward, and I think that was very important for us to link up the play in the front area. He started chipping in with goals as well later in the season, assists as well, some key assists, and the whole idea to bomb up from that left side and really help out Timo Werner and Mason Mount at times when he played on the left side. He became a very important factor. And when you think about it, the adversity, his whole story of, because I don't think Reece James really needed to do much, because I feel like Callum sort of kind of gave up. Do you know what I mean? And then he was automatically just shifted in Reece James. And I'm not taking anything away from Reece James. Reece James was fantastic, but Chilwell, RJ, I felt like he had to fight because Alonso wasn't that bad in the beginning under Thomas Tuchel. He was actually playing good. So Chilwell actually had to work his backside off to topple Alonso and then get himself into the mix, because there was a moment where Chilwell was finding it difficult to sort of adjust to the left wing, but he adjusted to it very well, and then he really took over and he became Chelsea's number 1 left back and left wing back. So from that point of view, I am inclined to give him an 8, because I thought he didn't have a bad season under Frank Lampard either. Yeah, the December period and the January period, everyone had a bad time. And Chilwell probably didn't look that great at that time. Everyone was sort of questioning his 50 million price tag. But I can't discredit the impact later he's had under Thomas Tuchel. Just like Rudiger, when we talk about impact, I think Chilwell had a very big impact defensively as well, very solid. The way he pocketed Mahrez in the final, when what Mahrez did last season to him, means something. So for me, RJ, it's an 8. But what's your final shout? I'm going to let you have the final shout on this.
I'm glad you brought up Mahrez, because I didn't know he was playing in the Champions League final. I didn't see him the whole game. So credit to Chilwell for pocketing him. But in all seriousness, when I said if we're going to give Reece James 7.5, we couldn't give him less than that, what I meant was that was the absolute minimum. And to be honest, even though I'm a very, very big Reece James fan, and even though he's 21 and his ceiling's arguably a bit higher than Chilwell, who's been there, done that, had more years of experience, adjusting to a new team with that expectation and the fact that he was able to wrestle his spot back from Alonso, who was a more natural left wing back. Again, the way he steamed home to the finish line, I'd be very comfortable giving him an 8 overall. So, credit to him. I'm agreeing with you, 8.
Brilliant. Let's lock in 8 here. The live chat's a bit of a mixture. Some are saying 8, some are saying 7.5. Look, I mean, as long as the difference isn't that we are saying 8 and some people are saying 6. Do you know what I mean? 8. 7.5s and 8, I can live with that. I don't think that's a massive argument to have. Let's talk about quickly Alonso and Emerson as well. Arja, I'll start with this. For me, Alonso, look, I'm not going to get into too much description. He was poor under Frank Lampard. I think under Frank Lampard he was probably a 2, and then under Thomas Tuchel he lifted himself up to maybe a 5.5 to us. I'd say a 5.5. I mean, he did produce some really good moments as well, but at the same time he got toppled over by Chilwell, and then at times he looked very exposed against West Brom. I still remember, once again, everyone had a poor game, but there were a few other times as well where Alonso looked, not that great. But I'm not going to lie. There were performances against Atletico Madrid first leg where he did well. But I think 5.5 is a decent score for Alonso. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit negative here, which is unusual for me. But I'd go a 5 to be honest. Because I'm trying to be objective. He did make a couple of telling contributions at times, but he didn't feature enough for me, and it wasn't like as if when he was there, he was absolutely tearing down the place, because again, he had a couple of good goals and what have you, but he had the chance, using his experience in a left wing back role, to really give Tuchel a headache and solidify that position. But ultimately, he couldn't keep Chilwell out in the cold. So overall, I don't know. I think a 5, which reflects average based on our scoring system, that's what he was to me. He was average.
I'd keep a 5. I think you're right. I think 5's a decent. 5.5. I think maybe I was trying to be a bit generous. Emerson, for me, RJ, I don't think he featured much, man. I'm not even sure if he deserves a rating, to be honest, because let's face it, he wasn't given a chance at all by any of the managers. So I'm not really even sure how to rate him. I think to even give him some sort of rating is probably wrong. Like if I give him a 3, for argument's sake, I don't think he regressed.
Misleading, isn't it?
It's very misleading. It's not like I can't judge that he's regressed. Do you know what I mean? Like he did not even feature. And then the very little time that he did feature, Atletico Madrid, I remember first touch, goal. There was a couple of times that,
that's right.
And then there were a couple of times he played as a left CB in the FA Cup, I believe, for Thomas Tuchel. I can't rate him. I really can't. I feel like.
Can we give him an NR? Can we give him an NR? Not rate him?
Maybe we just delete him off. I say if you can't rate him, we just delete him off, because there's no point.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
For me,
live chat seems to agree, I think.
Yeah, the live chat's like, so Sam's saying Emerson not enough games. Honestly, I don't think it's worth it. Okay, RJ, you kick things off with Jorginho.
Well, what a sort of polarizing figure he has been, continues to be. But in terms of, before we jump into his rating, how good were some of those images at the end when he was in tears, just to show how much it meant to him?
That's
It's funny because he's a player that he's probably the most divisive amongst the Chelsea football Twitter community. And obviously I have Italian heritage, so I'm quite close to him, but I'm also very honest about recognizing his limitations. But one thing I won't question is his character and his passion. and what it means to him to help Chelsea win that title. So I think regardless of whatever happens for his future, he's cemented his place in Chelsea folklore with that Champions League win. So I'm very happy for him to at least show all the fan base that he is a winner and he has helped us achieve some greatness. So great for him. In terms of his overall rating, I think, look, he was quite prominent towards in the Premier League. He had 28 appearances, 7 goals, top goal scorer, all from the penalty spot. He did miss a couple penalties, so that's a bit of an asterisk for him, which is unusual for him. And a couple of important ones at times, especially against Liverpool when it was when we were down, we needed him, and the usually composed Jorginho did miss. So it's a bit harsh to sort of rate on that, but he usually is someone we depend on. Champions League, 12 games, 1 goal, 1 assist. Obviously, we know what they were, and two games in the FA Cup. Overall, I think we finished 4th. We finished 1 point ahead of last season. At times, particularly under Frank, in that back four system, in that lone DM role, we look very vulnerable, very vulnerable. And it's only because, this is not to slack off on George, because I'm a fan of his technical capabilities and his leadership, but his physical shortcomings were there for us to see. When he was beaten, there was a 75% chance that they were going to score plus. It was, you know what I mean, because he had no recovery pace. And it wasn't his fault. It wasn't a lack of effort. It's just what he's working.
And the centre-backs were exposed.
And they were exposed. But under Tuchel, protected him with the back three and done a great job in keeping it nice and compact. But overall, when you look at the whole season, I'd have to say, for me personally, I'd go between a 7, 7.5. But that, again, might be a bit generous for him.
I would say a 7, and here's why. I think under Thomas Tuchel, I agree completely everything that you said under Frank Lampard. I can't even, deny any of that. I think that's spot on what you said under Frank Lampard. Under Thomas Tuchel, very instrumental. The build-up, very, very needed with Jorginho. This is the reason why, Thomas Tuchel wanted him at PSG as well, so we could clearly see that. However, here's the thing, RJ. When Jorginho has had a stinker, he has a proper stinker. Arsenal, that no-look pass, whatever he was trying to do to Kepa, that was unbelievable. And that game, he looked shaky throughout. Do you know what I mean? And that sort of culminated to our poor sort of form leading up to the Champions League. And I also remember West Brom, where he was one of the main players that got Thiago Silva into a massive mess in the second time we played West Brom. So a couple of proper stinkers from Jorginho. But then again, he's had some immense performances. Porto in the Champions League, Real Madrid in the Champions League, obviously in the final against Man City. Fantastic. So for me, overall, when I look at the entire package under Frank Lampard, under Thomas Tuchel, I would have to say 7 is probably the adequate rating for him. I feel like 7.5, as I said, gets into the exceptional side of things. I can't put him as a 7.5 to make him an exceptional, because there has been flaws which end up being massive, massive highlights. Do you know what I mean? It's not like little mistakes that, we can get over it. They ended up being monumental mistakes. So a 7 for me. So what's your thoughts? Happy with the 7?
Because I agree. In terms of, he's pretty consistent. When he's like the heartbeat of the team, he gets things ticking over, right? So he's usually pretty stable, right? He's usually very good. But I agree, when his variations, when he's off his game, the standard deviations are just too far apart. Like, you look at some other players who have a dip in form, and the boundary of their dip in form isn't as far and wide as what his bad stinker, as you say. So, I think, look, it's a long season. He played a lot of games. He was more good than he was bad. I think 7 is a fair objective score for him. But, and sometimes people prefer aesthetics over effectiveness. And I think in such a crucial position in that centre of the park, that to me is the most important area, by the way. When you look at the whole 38-game season in that most critical position, and the fact that we finished 1 point ahead, some people say, that's because the strikers didn't do their job. And there's an accountability up front too. But there were many games, especially in that back four system, where we looked very open. And the fact that Tuchel had to come in and shake it up and play the back three, for me, Jorginho is a system player that we had to adjust our style and setup to cater for his strength. So yes, good. If it was in 2 seasons or 2 halves of the season, he probably gets a slightly higher score because he was so important in that back three.
Yeah.
But when you go pre-Tuchel, he was, between average and a 6 almost. So, I think 7's fair.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Billy Gilmour, I don't think he played enough. He's another one of those ones where I don't know if I can rate him. I mean, is that how you feel, RJ, as well? Do you think there is a rating to be given here?
No, I think it's misleading because you can't say he was, he was good when he played. But how do you say that as a whole season? It's not fair. So
it's not fair. You're right. It absolutely. I mean, he ended up playing, I think, later in Thomas Tuchel time against Fulham and a few other. Like, it's not enough to give him a rating.
Just on Billy, I don't know what your thoughts are, Miz, but for me, I'm hoping next season, if he's going to hang around, he needs a lot more minutes. Otherwise, I want to see him go on loan because I want to see him playing. I want some development for him because warming the bench, I'm not sure is that beneficial at this stage, but. Quick thoughts on that.
Me too, man. Me too, RJ. I mean, if we're thinking about getting a DM as well, which we are, heavily linked with the DM, then where does it put someone like Billy Gilmour? So, he seriously needs to start thinking about getting himself a loan because I don't want to see another season where he barely plays. And it's detrimental. These players need to play. It's very detrimental for them, their growth, if they don't continue to play. You look at players like Sancho, such a young age and playing so many games, getting all that experience under the belt in the Champions League and whatnot. These players are going ahead and they're just developing and they're just absolutely screaming through. So, Billy Gilmour definitely, in my opinion, needs a loan as well. Kante, I'll start Kante. For me, he's been one of our best players. I have him for the shout for Ballon d'Or. 3 back-to-back man of the matches in the Champions League. Immense performances. I think you take away Kante's performances in those matches in Champions League and we struggle. We badly struggle. And this is no disrespect to the rest of the team. I think the rest of the team were fantastic as well. But Kante, his impact in the Champions League, A-class, all right? Ballon d'Or level. Premier League as well. There were moments where I still remember the Mason Mount assist for Liverpool where Mason Mount scored that goal, that brilliant goal, the long ball. And the amount of times that he's put on a masterclass performance in the Premier League has been immense. And here's the thing that I also want to say, RJ. It's when he wasn't available for us, when he was injured, we sometimes looked a bit weird. Do you know what I mean? Like we lacked that tenacity sometimes, and no disrespect once again to Jorginho and Kovacic, phenomenal combination. But when you don't have Kante, I feel like something was missing. This is one player I'm willing to give 9 or 9.5. I thought you take away the times where he didn't feature. He's been injured as well a little bit, but later on he's been managed very, very well under Thomas Tuchel. Under Thomas Tuchel, I think he was phenomenal. I can't even remember him having a bad game. Under Frank Lampard as well, I really cannot remember him having any sort of supremely bad games. Might have had a mistake here and there, sure. Overall, for me, RJ, this is probably the first player that I can say either 9 or 9.5. But what's your thoughts?
For me, I'd give him 11 out of 10.
Yeah, someone just said, we've got CFC NYG saying, Miz, give him a 10. You know what you want to do.
Well, first of all, he's, as you know, if there were any fanboys of certain players, you know me, Miz, I'm a big Kante fanboy. So I'm trying to put my bias to the side, but I don't know. I look at him overall and I'm just think, he was a player that turned up. He was the beacon of consistency. He maintained high standards, and he was someone that was, I like to jokingly say he was our 2 best players because he often felt like that. He was more than one. He was superhuman. It was just the fact that he elevated everybody else around him, just like how Silva and Mendy elevate our defense. He gives everybody else that extra bit of added spark because he's the everywhere man. And he's not just someone that cleans up in the box. He's someone that's chasing people in their box, in the other side.
And you know what, RJ? How many opposition players have come out and said, oh my God, he feels like 2-3 players in the field. Like he's everywhere. Do you know what I mean? So
Well, especially in Champions League, like I remember Real Madrid, Atletico, they all said it. This guy here, he's a superhuman freak. And I remember in the Champions League final, and we'll talk about Mount in a minute, I'm sure, but a lot of people I've heard talk about the great track back of Mount to come back and stop De Bruyne. But who was already back there in the box waiting to clean up? It was Kante there. So again, he's a definite. I don't even think he's an outside chance. He's a definite strong chance to get Ballon d'Or for me, because it's about time he starts getting recognition as being 110% world class. In terms of a rating, look, anything lower than a 9 is disrespectful. Simple as that, in my opinion. So
100. I would even say 9.5. Declared he is saying you cannot give Ballon d'Or winner a 9. Look, for me, 10. Look, he probably gets very close to a 10, RJ. He probably does. So for me, I think 9.5. 10 for me. You know what? Had he got the FA Cup, maybe I would have given, because that would have been everything that we could have won. Do you know what I mean?
But you know what, too, but we get a bit excited about Kante, because why wouldn't we? Because he's the best. But you look at, objectively speaking, he wasn't even included in the official Premier League Player of the Season nominees list.
That's insane.
Which is insane. Mason Mount was, right? So I'm just thinking, wow, I'd love to give him a 10 because he's amazing. It's hard to say that he was at 10 by definition was perfect. And if he played every game, had we won the Premier League, then a 10 starts sounding a lot more justified. But I think a 9 or a 9.5, that's enough high praise for him. And
for sure,
it's almost perfect. So I don't know, I'd be happy with that.
I'm going to go with a 9.5. I think he was phenomenal for us throughout the season. Champions League glory, a lot of it doesn't happen if it wasn't for his immense performance.
Can he or Kante, as I like to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Look, maybe we are being very generous in terms of 9.5. Maybe 9's probably, but I think generous is probably something we need to be with Kante, no doubt. RJ, you kick things off with Kova. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, he's a difficult one for me to analyse, to be honest, because I've heard the saying, or someone a lot smarter than myself once described him as being a box-to-box midfielder that's not good in either box. So he's just one of those strange players that aesthetically he's amazing to watch. I love his silky skills. Even in a Champions League final, there was this one no-look sort of flick pass he did, and just bamboozled the defense. I'm like, look at this Croatian sensation we've got.
And his dribbles, RJ, his dribbles. And
his acceleration. His acceleration from the mark, the way he just burns the on-rushing defenders and starts to create openings. If he could add to his repertoire the final key pass or some shooting boots from 25, 30 yards out, this guy here all of a sudden starts becoming world-class. But because of that sort of fail to evolve into that next level, to me, he's like the player that could be. You know what I mean? He's not the player that's got him there yet. I'm hoping it's yet. Yeah. But some people say in the chat, 8, look, that's very generous to me. I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah,
look,
very
for me,
generous.
Overall, because he's had his stats are, just quickly, 27 Premier League appearances, 10 Champions League appearances and 3 FA Cups. And 2 assists in total, so that's actually a big improvement for him. But overall, it's actually hard for me to say he even had a better season than Jorginho, to be frank with you. So,
exactly,
look, I think 7 would be my maximum for him, but keen to hear what you say.
You know what? I have to look at it from a Jorginho point of view. I feel like Jorginho's had a better season than Kovacic. And let's be honest, Kova got injured in a very crucial moment for us. And this is nothing against him. If you get injured, you get injured. But we had to still accept the fact that he was unavailable during that time. So, we have to look at availability has some portion of the points as well. You got to be available throughout the season. It is a very big factor. That's why Mason Mount gets all the ticks. And that's why I suppose Kante has been available a lot more than previous seasons, even though he has had the injuries this season. Availability definitely plays a bit of a factor. I think for Kova under Frank Lampard, started okay. Then I feel like, RJ, he was one of the players that down tools under Frank Lampard. I started seeing, and this is no disrespect or having a bad go at Kova at all. He just probably thought that this manager wasn't right for him. I honestly personally felt his performances right at the end when Frank was playing poorly, Kova's performance was poor as well, like very, very poor, to a point where I started thinking maybe he's down tools on Frank Lampard. So there's that. Under Thomas Tuchel, complete contrast. The Jorginho and Kovacic combination came back and they started looking like $1 million again. But once again, there are times where I do get frustrated that all his dribbles, all his great passing sequences doesn't end up to a production, doesn't end up to an assist, doesn't end up. And I feel like sometimes he can get in and around just drifting just outside the box and really ping a shot. But he doesn't have a shot in him. Just like Jorginho, they don't have a shot in them. Kante doesn't have a shot in him. So if I think Jorginho had a 7 and I feel like Jorginho had a better season, I think Kovacic is probably a 7 as well. You know what I mean?
I want to just add to that too, is that we highlighted in the attacking sense, and people might say, well, that's not his primary job to get goals and assists. And okay, I respect that because he's in that pivot sort of area. But I think it's more about constructive criticism because of how good he can be in terms of when he's on, we move the ball quite well, and he's someone that creates those openings in between those stubborn defenses because he helps break the press. But it's just also, I have seen some instances because and some people in the chat are saying perhaps, Kova was great when Lampard there at TT unbeaten.
Yeah.
He was great. Look, I'm not sure about the recency bias, respectfully.
I don't think so.
necessarily agree with that because,
maybe.
there were some instances where, and again, when we lost against West Brom, we were all hopeless, but there were some occasions where as the centre midfielder, there were a couple goals where they crossed the ball in and he's just standing there jogging back and not tracking. And to me, that's a real bugbear of mine. Because that doesn't require specific skill, that requires effort. And sometimes,
RJ, recently, sorry to interject here, RJ, recently against Leicester in the Premier League, the second one where he was robbed of the ball and then, created a bit of a chaos for us where we were leading 2-0 and they literally just robbed the ball off him and then scored. Aston Villa as well, McGinn stole the ball off him. Luckily, we didn't get punished, but he did not come back very strong from when he got injured.
And it could be a factor of that, I think.
And it could be a factor of that. 100. But I tweeted that it could be a factor of that maybe he's not match fit. And then Champions League as well. Let's be all honest. He came right at the end of it, like literally when there's about maybe 10, 15 minutes to go. So, so there's that factor. Under Frank Lampard, I have to respectfully once again RCB and I don't think he was that great under Frank Lampard this season. I would like you to go back and watch some of the games that we played in December and January in the likes of Everton, in the likes of Arsenal, in the likes of West Ham, Aston Villa, Man City, Leicester. I don't think he set the worlds apart. So for me, 7 is probably the right score because he did turn it around under Thomas Tuchel. So yeah, I mean, I'm going with a 7, RJ. What's some Sam's saying 6.5. Blick Boy is saying 7.5. I think 7's a decent one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think we just need to be clear on the objective of all this. I think it's an assessment based on what we've seen throughout his contribution individually throughout the season. It's not to say we don't rate him as a player. I think it's just he wasn't at his best. And I think hopefully next season we get a little bit more improvement because we know the player he can be. But to be honest with you, I would struggle to justify that he was better overall than Jorginho, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
No, I have to agree. I'm sticking with the 7 because I personally think Jorginho probably had a better season. So if we give Jorginho a 7 and everyone agreed with that, well, how can you disagree with Kova? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So, look, we're happy to change things around. If live chat, if you guys have any other thoughts and compelling arguments on it, then maybe we'll change things around. Who do we have next up? Let's do Callum Hudson-Odoi right now, and then we go onto the forward line. I'll go with Callum. For me, RJ, I don't know, man. I don't think I've been that impressed with Callum Hudson-Odoi, to be honest. I want to be patient, but There were instances where he looked great. Crystal Palace game from the right wing-back position, he looked very good. But then there were other games where he was given an opportunity to start. He didn't look that great. Under Frank Lampard, he barely got an opportunity. He got opportunities off the bench. In the December-January period, he was actually getting some minutes and he was probably looking one of the better players. But once again, didn't play enough or didn't get enough starts. And then once Thomas Tuchel came in, the Wolves game, we started thinking that maybe Callum would get a lot more minutes in the wing-back. Kind of lasted for a couple of games and then Reece James kind of took over. So I don't know, man. I don't know if he's really developed from last season as well. If I look at last season, coming back from the injury, he probably didn't have a great season last season either. I can't really say that he had a better season this season. I think he chipped in with a couple of goals, few assists here and there.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, exactly. 4 goals, 3 assists, or overall, it was, 4 goals and 5 goals and 5 assists in 35 odd appearances in total. Not great. Some of it's minutes based as well. So his, direct goal contribution per minute ratio wasn't as bad as the overall aggregate. But yeah, I tend to agree with you, Miz. I was expecting a bit more, especially where there were instances throughout the season where he was given an opportunity because some of our wingers weren't quite firing. Or Tuchel, really at the start, we thought we revolutionised him in that right wing back spot, and then it phased out real quick for him, and he became hidden in the background while the rest of the team were progressing with their unbeaten run. I thought Kovacic was difficult to assess in terms of performance this year, but he's been someone that I was expecting probably a bit more from. I concede the fact that he's still very young. But you look at Reece James, he's still very young. Mason Mount's 22, he's still very young. Yeah. Eventually, we can't keep hiding behind the excuse of they're just too young. For me, CHO needs to start converting potential into actual output. And there's been a couple of times but against Man City, he was the one that Alonso got the touch on, but it could have very well been he scored the winning goal in that game against them. So I think he has had shades of good moments. But if I was to give a rating overall, because he still made 23 appearances in the Premier League. So it wasn't like he was like Billy Gilmour, who got no time to prove himself. Yeah. He had plenty of time to prove himself. But the way I look at him is that he's had time under Lampard, he's had time under, Tuchel now. More and more managers have had time to assess him, and he's just not somehow convincing them that he deserves to be a trusted starting member. That gives me cause for concern. But in terms of the overall rating, I would say, being generous, because we don't want to start bagging out, but I'd honestly say between a 6, 6.5, and that's just being honest.
Yeah, you know what? I was probably thinking about 5.5 to a 6, but maybe we can come to a middle ground and lock in a 6 here. I still think this is being generous, honestly. 6 means that you've had an above average season. Do you know what I mean? If we say 5 is average, 6 is above average. So I'm not really sure whether he had an above average, but look, at the end of the day, he's part of the Champions League glory. He's part of a team that's coming top 4. I think 6 is probably the right, right sort of score here. I'm just looking at some of the live chat. Sam saying 6.5, deserve more time under Lamps and done well under Tuchel when involved. Yeah, look, 6, 6.5. Once again, it's not like we're drastically apart, so we're going to keep with the 6. All right, RJ, let's go up front. We'll go with Timo Werner. You start with Timo Werner.
Yeah, he's had a mixed bag, hasn't he? Because on one hand, we brought in a guy who was going to solve our goal crisis. Like, even though, interestingly enough, we scored 9 goals less this season in the Premier League, but conceded 18 goals less, if I'm not mistaken. Happy to be corrected. But overall, in the Premier League sense, 35 appearances, so it was definitely someone who gave a lot of his energy and time for us. But 6 goals and 12 assists, so good from an overall direct goal contribution. But I have to be honest, I was expecting at least double-digit goals, and some of the gravity of those chances missed are frankly unacceptable of someone of this stature, and especially of his quality. I want to be clear though. We know when we signed him, he wasn't someone that was brutally efficient. He was someone that created a lot of chances, high volume, but also high return. This season, there was high chances created, low return. So low return in terms of goals scored. But I've got to say, he was so instrumental in terms of the way, especially under Tuchel, the way we wanted to play with the counter press, with that real frustration up front, with that speed, and especially even in teams when we were versing a low block from a frustration point of view, but even on the counter attack. The goal that we scored, Havertz, in the final was because Werner made the run and pulled Diaz apart. And because Diaz was pulled apart, that created a massive opening for Kai Havertz to exploit the middle.
Exactly.
So without the work rate of Werner, we're not the same effectively up front. But the flip side is he also then has that cutback from, I think it was Chilwell or whoever it was, or Havertz even, and he completely scuffed his shot. So you're getting a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing from Werner.
Two of them in the first half against Man City.
Exactly. So he's a frustrating player. He's not someone that I'm disappointed in because he doesn't let you down from an effort point of view and contribution, but he's frustrating. I'm not going to lie. When some of those efforts are missed, I'm thinking, come off it. Or how can someone that is so fast continuously be offside? Why are you offside? You should be a meter behind everybody else at best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's a frustrating, but I do think, touch wood, in the off season, we're going to fix all these little problems and we're going to have a real hot prospect on our hands. But overall, getting to a rating, look, I'm going to say his contribution-wise, controversially, I'm going to say 7.5. I thought he delivered. Like, you know, it wasn't perfect. He probably should have scored a few more goals and pushed him up into the 8+ category. But his contribution as a whole, and given the fact that it's a new season, new league, expectation, whatever, 7.5 for me. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, he has had some monumental misses. Like, we cannot deny that. He's had some monumental misses. He's even come out and said when Frank Lampard got sacked that had he put some of those goals away, maybe the gaffer stays. Do you know what I mean? These are his words. These are his words that he said. Under Thomas Tuchel as well, that issue never got away. You know, in fact, it probably even intensified. He started missing even more crazier sort of goals. But we cannot look away from the contributions, and we cannot look away from his mentality of not giving up, because any other player with the fan base that we have would have crumbled.
Together with our members, we breathe life.
What was that?
I was actually trying to log into the channel to make a comment, but now I'll wait for that.
That was funny. I was like, oh my God, who's that? But yeah, Ajay, look, I cannot look away from the contributions that he's had. He's become a very, very big player for Thomas Tuchel. He pretty much, the predominant players were Mason Mount, Antonio Rudiger, and Timo Werner. These were like three main ones, and probably Mendy as well. Probably 3-4 main ones that you knew they were confirmed starters, and then everyone else, would sort of fill in accordingly. So for me, I would also look, 7.5 makes me think exceptional, and this is where I was sort of thinking 7, because I don't know if I can put him in the exceptional category, because there is some clear, distinct issues with his technicality. Shooting has an issue. Obviously, we've already touched on his, the misses that he's had. I know he won the Champions League, but I can't give him a 7.5. Feels like that's exceptional. And I know the goal contributions are great. I have to give him a 7, RJ. I feel like 7 is probably the decent amount. First season, he's done all right, but there's still a lot of improvements to have. If he continues this same thing next season, RJ, I don't think he'll be appreciated the way he's missed the goals, because I don't think the fan base would appreciate the fact that he's now missing it again the second time around. So my thought is 7. Like, would you budge, or you sticking with the 7.5?
No, I think I suppose, to me, I look at it as it's a collective sport, and the fact that both gaffers, I should say, because I think aside from Mount, the numbers wise, he's played the most amount. So to me, that says there's a whole lot of trust in what he brings as a collective. But we have to be honest too. He simply missed a lot of chances that could have been quite costly for us. So we wouldn't be talking about how good his other qualities were had some of those other objectives not been obtained. So if we lost the Champions League final and we missed out on top 4, all of a sudden his rating plummets. I think it hits
goes
a 5,
down even
6.
more. Yeah.
So I could probably live with the 7. So yeah, I think that's fair enough, mate.
That's a very good way of looking at things, RJ. We got lucky that, those issues weren't magnified. Had we not won in the Champions League, RJ, Timo Werner would have been annihilated in the fan base. Annihilated. So yeah, you're right. We have to keep it in that manner. Let's finish Pulisic as well. I think he's another one that from where he finished last season, RJ. He was in such a high, the way he was electric at the end of the season. And stats would say the same thing, RJ. His stats last season was so good for a first season, considering he was injured. And then the adversity he had, in order to win back the position under Frank Lampard. This season, I think his stats went down. I believe he had about 11 goals, 11 assists last season, something like that in all club competition. This season, it was like 6 and 4 in all club competition. So, I don't know, man. I think if we're giving Cho a 6, this is probably not more than a 6.5. I don't know how. Look, Pulisic did score a very important goal against Real Madrid. He was instrumental against Porto in the second leg, but we have to look at the whole season. We have to look at the entire season, and I don't think entire season he hasn't been that glamorous under Frank Lampard this season, and he definitely didn't play enough under Tuchel in the Premier League. He didn't get enough starts because Timo Werner and Mason Mount were taking care of things. So for me, it's probably a 6.5.
Yeah, no, some pretty fair, balanced comments. To me, he was one of the players that I was probably most disappointed in, to be honest with you, because of how incredibly important he was last season and the role he played into setting the platform for the great transfer window and all the promise. He was the hope for us, that he was going to carry that form in and really go on leaps and bounds, but he fizzled out, didn't he? He did have a couple of challenges. He was in and out. Was he an impact player? Was he a starter? He complained a couple of times that he wasn't getting the treatment he deserved and wanted to be considered as a genuine starter. But unfortunately, he didn't back up his own hype this season. And I felt, apart from a few important moments, a player of his quality in 37 or 43 odd appearances to be producing, 6 goals and 4 assists or whatever it was in the end, it's simply not good enough from a player that we know can do a lot better. And it's not, and he can't use the excuse of, I've come from a new league and need to adjust. So he doesn't have that behind him like a Havertz, like a Werner, etc. So overall, better. I think he had more of a contribution than Cho, objectively speaking, but not that much better, to be honest. I'd say 6.5.
Yeah.
This is an interesting comment,
Yeah, Pulisic regressed the most out of any of the players. Look, we've said quite a few players probably regressed. We've mentioned that Zouma regressed. I don't think Cho developed either, in my opinion. Some say that he probably did.
But you know what, as well, Miz, in terms of Pulisic, I suppose if we're trying to look for a positive in what has been not a really great season from him, the fact that he came back from his injury and he seems to be going okay, touch wood, at least he's shown a little bit of physical resilience. So at least his availability since coming back from that injury, at least he hasn't been as fragile. So that's 100. One promising thing. So hopefully that means he'll come back better than ever. So fingers crossed.
No, for sure, agreed. Hopefully next season he stays fit. He has to. I think if he has one more injury late in season, I don't know whether his future is going to look very bright at Chelsea, because that'll be 3 injury-prone season, which I don't think even he would appreciate. Let's go to the. You know what? We'll leave Mount till the end. Let's go with Ziyech. Ziyech is a good one. I'll let you start first, because I'm you know me, I'm very close, emotionally attached with Ziyech. I'll let you go first and be balanced about him, and then we'll see what I have to say.
I feel like I should handicap it a little bit because I'm a bit concerned you're going to overshoot him. So I think I should undershoot him so we get to a fairer outcome. So I might give him a 2 out. I might give him a 2 out of 10 just to bring him back down.
Then I'm going to have to bump him up by another 7.
That video. Definitely don't clip that one. No. Look, again, this is another player. I thought, oh, geez, he started off quite well. He had some important games, and even in Tuchel's era, he didn't get as. I think it's fair to say. Even I'm keen to see what you say about that. But I felt he had a few important goal contributions against City and in the FA Cup, etc. But as a whole,
Madrid as well.
Exactly. So he was quite clutch, if you will, at certain times, which is obviously super important in terms of the result. But overall, he did not seem to gel in the new system as much as what I think, in Frank's, like it was a more attacking mode. So I think in a 4-3-3, him playing out in that right side, having more freedom, having Reece James to give him a bit more extra of an outlet, gave him that ability to whip in some of those balls. Even though I know he has played in the centre, I felt like in the Premier League, he doesn't get the same amount of time to be able to do things at his pace. So I think he was one of the players, when I look at it overall, he struggled to impose his sort of natural elegance on the games. And I felt there were some times where players let him down and didn't finish certain opportunities.
Yeah.
He had some bright moments. He's a good player. But for me, I've got to be honest with you, he's one that I think his future is a bit of a question mark based on certain other players that are on the horizon. But to me, I like him as a whole. I think if he has a strong off-season and builds up that fitness and perhaps a new formation gets the best out of him, but he's someone overall, when I look at it, it's not terrible. It wasn't an average season by any means. I think he still contributed. He still had a positive contribution. I think I would go probably a 6.5 for him. So I still think he was better than Cho. I think it'd be a little bit unfair to say he was on the equal footing as Cho. Yeah. But I think I had higher expectations, like most people, that the Moroccan magician was going to come and whiz his magic all over us, but didn't quite happen the way we were hoping for. So 6.5 for me.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to agree, because under Frank Lampard, he didn't start off because he was injured. Then when he came on, he was actually very good. He had quite a few man of the match performances. I remember Krasnodar, Burnley, I think Sheffield United as well, Newcastle. So he was one of the main players for Frank Lampard. But when Frank Lampard was having the bad time as well, that coincided with his second injury again. I remember against Leeds, he got injured, and then he didn't feature in all the bad times that Frank Lampard had. And then the time then he came back, he did not look that great. Under Thomas Tuchel, he barely got the opportunity. But when he did get the opportunity, as you said, he was clutch. He did what he had to do. But then he was in and out. Like, he wasn't consistently given the opportunity. And then there were games where he had absolute stinkers as well. FA Cup final against Leicester, I don't think Ziyech was good at all. So, and then there were other games as well where he hasn't been that great. I'd have to agree. 6.5 is probably the right score. I mean, I think he was better than Callum Hudson-Odoi, and we gave Callum 6. I don't think he was supremely better than Pulisic, because Pulisic, let's be honest, probably had the same sort of season like Ziyech. So for me 6.5 as well. I have to agree. So I'm happy with that. I mean, look, I'm not happy with that, but I'm sort of
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I still remember that iconic photo with Pulisic and Ziyech. They were in their training kits and they were hugging each other. And I'm thinking, these two players are going to be so instrumental for us this season, and they both equally were quite relatively underwhelming in the end. But yeah, that's how it works sometimes. So we'll see what happens next season.
No, I have to agree. All right, let's look at Giroud and Tammy first up before we go to Kai. I'll kick things off with Giroud. I'll let you have Kai. For me, Giroud, the only sort of highlights I can remember is really the Sevilla 4 goals and the Atletico Madrid overhead goal. But it wasn't as if it was a mainstay under Frank Lampard either. It was more of a, whenever one of the forwards didn't look good, we throw Giroud in. I think he scored a goal against Leeds as well, which was important under Frank Lampard. But overall, he did not really fit into any of the managers' A plan. He was more of the B plan. Do you know what I mean? Whenever the managers probably didn't have a proper plan that was working, they'd throw in Giroud to mix things up. So he was never part of the number one plan. And under Thomas Tuchel as well, the same thing. Besides that Atletico Madrid overhead goal, he barely featured under Thomas Tuchel, to be honest, and he just literally came off the bench. Tammy Abraham was a strange one. He was actually featuring under Frank Lampard, was scoring a few goals, but there was clear deficiencies that we could see under Tammy Abraham. There were things that he needed to improve on, no doubts about that. And then under Thomas Tuchel, categorically frozen out. Like Thomas Tuchel didn't want to do anything with Tammy Abraham. So for me, I'd have to say Giroud maybe 5.5. Like I don't know if he's really created a major impact. I mean, if we just solely look at the 2 goals in the Champions League, I don't think that's fair enough to base an argument that we should give him more than 5.5. But yeah, for me, Giroud is probably a 5.5, and Tammy's probably the same because he's barely played. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how I give him a 6.
For me, well, Sam said there's some recent big news from Simon Phillips, so that'll be quite interesting to unpack. So maybe we can sidebar that one.
Yeah,
but look, for me, my friend, yeah, see if you can bring it up. I'll give my thoughts on the Giroud Tammy situation. I agree, Tammy, his influence was quite limited, and he, despite being our top goal scorer, interestingly, he was frozen out. Obviously, under Tuchel, he didn't see what he liked, and that it is what it is, unfortunately. And I thought he probably could have gotten a bit more opportunities, especially because our attack was quite underwhelming towards the back end. But because he wasn't given that chance, it's quite hard to give him too much of a rating other than, that 5.5. So I think 5's probably a bit harsh because he still scored those goals for us, which other attacking players around him with a lot more opportunities didn't. But for Giroud, I think our views slightly diverge here, because even though his amount of goals and that was quite limited, he actually had a quite important influence in terms of he scored the winner against Atletico in the first leg. He had the 4 goals against Sevilla. He only played 17 Premier League games. But then when I compare him, and this is part of our whole moderation process, to say that he was less influential and impactful than Hudson-Odoi, that's to me a little bit misleading, because I thought when you look back at the season, I can at least say that Giroud scored the amazing goal against Atletico, the 4 goals against Sevilla, he scored 4 goals in Premier League. Whereas, what are some of the main things that stand out from Cho's highlights this season? I can't remember. To be honest, I would go 6.5 for Giroud, or at least 6 to match Cho. But I don't know. To me, I would feel I'd hard to justify that he would get less of a rating than Cho, and maybe it's being a bit harsh on Cho.
I think you're right, man. How can you give Cho more than Giroud when probably Giroud had a lot more impact? So completely understand.
It's a bigger argument, isn't it? That Rudiger, even though he only played half the Premier League games, his impact was high. And the same thing with Giroud. It's not his fault he wasn't used that often, but when he was more positive than anything. So that's where my justification comes from.
I have to agree. I completely have to agree. What did you give for Tammy, by the way?
I'd say 5.5, just because he did not to the same effect as Giroud, but he still actually had positive numbers and impact when he was picked. So I'd go 5.5.
And under Thomas Tuchel, he was absolutely
exactly, which is not his fault. So,
that's not his fault. So for me, I'd have to agree 5.5 as well. I don't think he wasn't supreme. He wasn't supremely bad either. So that's probably right. By the way, just quickly on the news, look, these are the things. I don't want to get into too much of these. We're going to see these sort of news over and over again in this transfer window. This journalist said that journalist said this. It was Lukaku literally a couple of days ago, and then Lukaku comes out and says that he's staying at Inter, and all of a sudden it's not Lukaku anymore. And now the whole thing is it's Haaland because Roman Abramovich wanted him, and some agent went to Terry Flower's YouTube channel and said that that's the case. We knew that. This isn't new news. Like Roman, we've known it from a very, very long time. and from tweets, you check it out. Like, check out some of the old tweets and even any other old articles. Roman has always liked Haaland. The issue is Dortmund's not going to lose out on 2 players. And the issue is, if you want to get Haaland this season, you're going to have to break the bank. Badly going to have to break the bank. So, next season he's going to have to pay out. The buyout clause triggered, which is for 75 million, and it's going to be a lot more easier. This season you're going to have to really put in at least 150 million.
And just even that is like, isn't that? I'm sorry to interject, but even with the whole Lukaku thing, just quickly, he said, "Oh, I'm staying at Inter." Players say things all the time. He's being diplomatic. If Chelsea came in with some gigantic offer, Inter situations, and I'm an Inter fan in Serie A, their situation financially is quite precarious. If a serious offer came in, Lukaku's probably just trying to be friendly and diplomatic and not stir the boat before the Euros. But I reckon if Chelsea came in with that serious offer, all of a sudden his situation is not crystal clear, and who knows, the door's open again. So take it with a pinch of salt.
Pinch of salt,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. Man. I'm not going to jump up and down about this whole Haaland thing, especially it's a news that has been known. Romans always like Haaland. It's not a new thing. Like, he's always liked him. Whether it happens, whether Haaland wants to come as well, like, I don't think this person actually fancies to come to Chelsea. I'm being honest. I don't think Haaland absolutely fancies to join Chelsea. If anything, I think Haaland's probably going to go to Bayern Munich down the track. When Lewandowski goes, Haaland's probably going to be Bayern Munich's top dog. So, and they like to monopolize. Yeah, they like to monopolize the league over there, and they did that with Lewandowski years ago with Dortmund. They'll do the same thing with Haaland. They see that he's the next big thing, so they're not going to lose that. So, look, I don't know if that's going to happen. And the wages, let's not forget, RJ. Haaland's asking for some unbelievable level of wages, and I don't know if that's going to sit well with some of the Chelsea players that are European champions right now. Do you know what I mean? Like,
if anything, I could see a more, not probable, but a more realistic outcome of some sort of Sancho swap deal in some respects, or something like that. I could see that, but
we'll see. And I don't want. Maybe we can talk about that on a different show. Okay, let's get back to Kai. RJ, your thoughts on Kai?
Champions League winning scorer, 12 out of 10 he should get. Simple as that. No. Look, being objective, the player did not set the world alight with the expectations that he was given. Yeah. And it's not his fault that he was spent that much money on him. He's just a young kid that's a talented footballer that the club rated highly and paid big money for. So that's not his fault. He can't influence that.
Yeah.
I think what didn't help his cause was getting COVID. That really affected his momentum because he was showing slowly some signs that he was adjusting. And historically speaking, we have seen that he's actually gotten better in second halves of the season. But what I liked about Kai was that before he had COVID, he had some good moments where he thought, okay, we've got somebody here, we just need to stay patient. Then COVID hit, and it wasn't just he got COVID and he was in bedridden for 5 days. Apparently, it hit him pretty hard. And being a professional footballer, from a respiratory point of view, it affected him a lot. So as an elite athlete in competing in the best league in the world, that was something that really set him back. But the way he responded to adjust from a right winger to an attacking 8 to a false 9, again demonstrating his versatility, and he scored some important goals, but he also missed some gilt-edged chances against Arsenal, for example.
Yeah.
Overall, I felt, you know what?
Against Real Madrid as well, RJ. He should have done a lot better. Yeah.
He should have done a lot better. So it's not like we're going to turn around and say he was absolutely perfect, because he wasn't. But at the end of the day, you have to factor in the whole environment and the context and all of what he suffered in terms of the COVID, because that was a real sort of injury for him. But 4 goals in the Premier League in 27 appearances, 5 assists, 12 Champions League appearances, 1 goal, which I think we're going to remember that goal, 3 assists, and 1 goal and 1 assist in 5 FA Cup appearances. So he was quite balanced in terms of all competitions. He wasn't a one-trick pony. Man. Look, overall for me, I've got to say, I would give him I'd be inclined to give him a 7, to be honest with you, just because of the bounce back and the sort of important Again, this is about the important, influential impact that he had. So yeah, I'd go a 7.
Yeah, and you know what? In my mind, it was a 7 as well. And the reason being, I don't think he was that great under Frank Lampard. But then again, he had the disease, the illness, and then obviously under Thomas Tuchel, he didn't feature in the beginning. Once again, he was recovering from that illness. But then when he started playing the false 9, and especially his partnership with Timo Werner, that started playing a big role. Fulham, I remember where he scored the 2 goals. In the latter parts of the Premier League, he looked very, very good. And then in the second leg against Real Madrid, even though he missed a lot of chances, but he was one of the main players that got the best out of Timo Werner and also Mason Mount in that particular match. And then obviously in the Champions League final,
And like Chilwell is too, isn't he? Like he sort of was on the rise towards the end. So that could be good signs for us.
Everton, the false 9, that's where it started, and he looked very good. That was when I think it might have been Alonso that put in the ball, and then he took a shot and it just deflected off and went in against Everton. So look, I think 7's a decent score. 7.5, as I said, will go into the exceptional category, and I don't think he reached that. Had the season continued on, maybe he would have reached that. Do you know what I mean? I think he was getting better as the season was sort of finishing off. So hopefully he kicks things off like this next season and then picks it up. But for me, 7's probably the right score to give. And then some of the live chat people are, declared he's saying 7 as well, which is fair. All right, we've got 2 players. Let's go with Kepa. Is Kepa one of those ones where, RJ, we can't really rate here? I mean, he did feature in the cup matches, barely that much in the Premier League. I don't know whether he really... Maybe he improved slightly from last season. Last season was shocking under Frank Lampard. Maybe this season was a tad better. If I was to give him a score, it would have to be 5.5. Honestly, that's what I'm thinking. RJ, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I just don't think he's had enough because Mendy didn't start the Premier League, but when he came in after a few games, he played pretty much. Again, Mendy had 31 appearances in the Premier League, so that leaves 6 or 7 or whatever, 8 in the Premier League. He had a good FA Cup run. Let's give him a shout out. He did well during that run. People they didn't really criticise him for the FA Cup goal conceded, but it's just one of those things where had Mendy been there, perhaps it's a different outcome. But I don't think he's had enough games. Again, like the sample size is too small to fully judge his season. So I think when he was there, good. But again, with Billy Gilmour, same sort of thing. Billy showed a lot of promise when he was there, but we can't give him an overall season rating, in my opinion.
All right, let's take Kepa out, man. You're right. I mean, I don't think there's enough sample size to actually give him a rating. I have to agree. And
maybe the live chat disagrees, but I don't know. That's my view.
Yeah, look, I mean, and if there is a rating, it's not going to be more than 5.5. And then how are we really rating him? Is it for the games that he's played? Like, you're right. It's not enough sample size to give him a score. You're absolutely right. Mason Mount is the lucky last. RJ, you want to go first or you want me to go first? How do you want to do this?
Well, you're the host. Why don't you decide?
Okay. For me, Chelsea player of the season, some big goals, RJ. Some big goals he scored. Liverpool, the way he took on Fabinho, Karim, snapshot, brilliant goal. FC Porto, that's where we created the half-turn prince was created by yourself. Real Madrid, second leg, the crucial second goal. Final assist, magnificent assist for Kai Havertz, the winner. These are just the contribution. Obviously, he didn't, produce a lot of set pieces as well. The headers in the beginning for Zouma. There were a few other goals as well. I believe there was a goal against Sheffield United. Very good finish with his left foot. Under Thomas Tuchel, he's actually looked, for me, as I've always said, under Thomas Tuchel, he was MVP. He was Thomas Tuchel's most valuable player, without a doubt. I think every team, 2 players off the bat. It was Mason Mount and Rudiger. They were the 2 players that were always starting. For me, if we are giving Kante, what did we give Kante? 9.5. if we're giving Kante 9.5, I don't know how you not give him at least 9.5. I don't know whether you can give him a 10, because that for me means he's perfect. He's absolutely had a perfect season. And I don't know if he's had a perfect season. Everyone's had some sort of mistakes. As I said, do you know what I mean? Like if he one day goes on to win the Premier League, FA Cup, Champions League and the lot, and he racks up the numbers in terms of assists, goals, because let's be honest, there were a few times where he's missed some really good opportunities in the FA Cup, albeit Kasper Schmeichel made an immense save
that's
against
the difference, isn't it? Because if he scores that goal, all of a sudden, that rating might become a lot more justifiable. So it's a tough one because
against Arsenal
phenomenal.
as well, right at the end of the season, there were a few misses that Mason Mount had. Do you know what I mean? Like those are the matches where if he single-handedly carried us through, maybe it ends up being a 10. But 9.5 for me, a phenomenal season. He's by far has been the better of all our new signings, and this is off the back of so many people had sort of, even myself, sort of doubted in the earlier parts of the season that maybe it's not like, even though I thought he was going to develop, I just didn't think his development would be this much. His one, RJ, has been monumental in growth, monumental. So for me, 9.5. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's tough. I'm looking at these stats here. Like I said, 36 Premier League games, 11 Champions League games, 5 FA Cups, 22 years old, the player of the season amongst all of the superstar signings. I talked about Kante being a beacon of consistency. This guy is like the same sort of caliber. And yes, he's still refining his game. The difference between the two, obviously, is that obviously Mount has got the ceiling. He's only so young, and the way he's transformed, we talk about regression and progression. This guy continues to grow leaps and bounds because he's always been quality, but he just continues to incrementally improve. Champions League winner, got the assist in the final of a Champions League, and has scored some pretty iconic goals on the way to that final. And he was a huge reason. And he's not one of those players that had a high impact in a fairly smaller sample size. He was a key reason why we were even in the top 4 to begin with. So not only that, he was influential in any of the important outcomes we achieved. So even though I'm a super Kante fan, I've got to say that on balance of things, and that's why he's nominated in the Premier League sort of player of the season category, he's got to get a better score than Kante, in my opinion, even though Ballon d'Or candidate Kante is, given his man of the matches. Look, I've got to be honest with you. He edges Kante as an overall output point of view. In my opinion, that might be controversial to some, but like again,
you're leaning towards a 10. Are you leaning towards a 10?
What can we break the rules? Can we get like 9.75? Nah, look,
we can. We probably can.
It's almost like, but this is the moderation. It's almost as if maybe he should get the 9.5 and Kante should get the 9, because I agree. Look, people are saying 10 in the chat, but I agree. And I think Tony Mount, your recent guest, which we should get on some point again, by the way, but I think even he would say, Mason, the guy who sets the incredibly high standards, would say that he knows he didn't have the perfect season, but I'm sure he's very proud of what he's done. So I think 9.5 is not disrespectful to him. I think it's recognizing the fact that there's always room for continuous improvement. If he won the treble and was part of the reason for it, but 9.5 doesn't get much better than that, in my opinion. But that's just me.
Yeah, man. There is no doubt Mason Mount is at least a 9.5. I think 10, as we've mentioned, is very difficult to give someone a 10. They have to have immense goal contribution, immense assists, immense in everything. He has all the off the ball, and all that intensity and counter pressing and pressing.
Chances created as well.
Chances created. I mean, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, he's one of the attacking players, and goal contribution count a lot. From that perspective, it hasn't been bad, but had it been unbelievable, then he ends up probably getting a 10. Now, the question is the Kante. Well, Kante has been phenomenal, no doubt, but did he actually have a better season than Mason Mount? That's the question. Would you say Kante had a better season than Mason Mount, RJ?
Well, I think the difference is Kante's had more individual standout performances in high-profile games. So the bigger the
You'll probably say the
occasion-
same thing for Mount as well, RJ, right?
Oh, but well, not factually though, because in the Champions League, categorically, Kante won man in a match in terms of the big knockout games heading to the final. So on the biggest platform of the biggest games, Kante was the best of the best, factually speaking. But overall, but Mason Mount was nominated as our best player of the season and was in the Premier League's official player of the season candidate. So that's why I think from a whole of season perspective, consistency-wise, and he's played 6 more Premier League games than Kante. That's not Kante's fault, but injury. And he's played 1 game less in the Champions League, but a few more games in the FA Cup. I just think he slightly pips him for me.
Yeah.
How is this? Kante gets Ballon d'Or and Mason Mount gets Player of the Season in the Premier League. So we're all happy. That would be great, I think. So could we have a scenario? Could we have a scenario that they get an equal score because we don't want to, because we're splitting hairs, so to speak? I don't know.
It is I hear. I definitely hear. I feel like bringing Kante down to a 9 might not be respecting his qualities enough. Do you know what I mean? Like as great as Mason has been, and we've already locked him up at 9.5. We're not changing that. Mason has been the standout player for Chelsea, no doubt about that. But Kante, as overall from a defensive point of view, and as RJ said, 3 back-to-back man of the matches in the Champions League, this can't be disregarded at all. And you look at it in the Premier League as well, or in the FA Cup, he hasn't had, I can't think of one bad game for Kante. I really cannot think of a monumental bad game from Kante. So maybe both of them can have, and same with Mount. Both of them, I think, can have a 9.5. And as you said, RJ, down the track, Kante is the one who's up for the Ballon d'Or. You know, it's not really like Mason Mount's up for the Ballon d'Or. So,
but he also was the player of the season as well. So the fact that he won the player of the season, Mason Mount, does that recognise that even amongst his all peers and everything, they were even saying that he was the players of the player. But yeah, again, to me, it's splitting hairs because they were performing at such an incredibly high standard. So we're just blessed to have them both. I know that might be sitting on the fence a little bit, but flip a coin because they're both amazing.
Nah, 100, man. This is fantastic. We've come to an end of the player ratings, almost gone 2 hours. I knew this would happen. All of these rating stuff always takes a long time. I'm hoping the live chat, you guys have enjoyed this. If you have, please smash the like button. These are the final standings that we've got. We've got Kai at 7, Timo Werner at 7, Mason Mount at 9.5, Giroud 6.5, Tammy 5.5, Pulisic 6.5, Ziyech 6.5, Jorginho 7, Kante 9.5, Kovacic 7, RJ 7.5, Callum's going to go 6, Chilwell 8, Alonso 5, Rudiger 8, Zouma 6, Silva 8, Azpi 7, Andres Christensen 7, Mendy 9. I think this is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with
rating. That. Declared's asked for a Tuchel rating.
Right, Tuchel rating. I'd have to give him a 9, man. I mean, he's done a madness in such a short time. Got us back into top 4. Yeah, Spurs ended up giving us that, but we had to get to that position for it to happen from where we were in like 9th or 10th. And then the madness that he created in Champions League, he outfoxed every single one of our opposition massively. Man City, Pep Guardiola, 3-peat. What's his name? From Atletico Madrid, Simeone beat him twice. Ancelotti, like there's a whole list of big managers that he's taken care of. Zinedine Zidane. So 9. Had he won the FA Cup, he'd probably get himself a 10 because he would have achieved all the objectives. Top 4, FA Cup, Champions League. I don't think he can do anything else. So he would have ended up getting a 10. So since he missed out on the FA Cup, I think 9 is probably 9.5. I'd say 9.5 probably. 9.5 is probably a decent one. RJ, what's your thoughts on Thomas Tuchel? 9.5, 9, where are you going?
Yeah, I'd probably go a 9 to be honest, because look, UCL winning, unbelievable. That's a phenomenal achievement. But we also got ourselves in a position where we were comfortably in the top 4 running, and we seemed to stumbled against some of these smaller teams. So even though he done a great job to get us back into the top 4 conversation, because we were about 5 points below top four at a time when Lampard left. But at the end of the day, we have to be honest. We were comfortably in our top four position. We had a 5-2 shock loss against West Brom, which was frankly embarrassing. And we also had that loss again against Arsenal. We drew against the likes of Brighton, Leeds, etc. So we can't sit here pretend to say that the Premier League run was perfect, because it wasn't. But at the end of the day, we stumbled over the finish line to get top four. So objective achieved. FA Cup final. Again, we got to the final like last season, but we failed to win it. So that was a little bit disappointing, but we got there. But we won the Champions League, so it doesn't get any better than that. So phenomenal way he rescued the season. And overall, great job. I'd give him a 9 out of 10 because not perfect, but pretty close to it.
Yeah, look, 9.5. I mean, as long as it's not like I'm saying 9.5 and you're saying 7.5. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're sort of approximately in the same page. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings the end of this show. Thank you so much for joining. Obviously, I will have RJ. I'm planning to have the boys from Down Under sometime next week. We'll discuss about it during the week. Maybe either a Tuesday or a Wednesday, somewhere down the track. We'll have that where we talk about, our other mates who's an Arsenal fan, and hopefully the Man United fan, Rob, can come along as well. And we can talk about that. But tomorrow I have a very, very special segment with Ryan, Carefree Tactics. You guys would have remembered, as I promised, that I want to do more tactical sort of shows with him. So Ryan and we're going to do a tactical show on Jadon Sancho, because we were planning to do Lukaku, but then Lukaku came with the interview and said that he's staying. So we had to hold that for a little bit until that rumor sort of comes about. But the whole Jadon Sancho links has been there. So we're going to do a tactical sort of show on how Jadon Sancho would fit in on the Thomas Tuchel style that he's been playing so far, the fluid front three and whatnot. So do tune in for that. We'll most likely have that about 1 p.m. UK tomorrow. Saturday, which is for Sydney people, just to let you know, that's 10 p.m. Saturday. So for UK, 1 p.m. on Saturday. So yeah, that's the next thing that's coming up. And then sometime early next week, whether it's Monday or Tuesday, I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll get RJ and Taryn, where we do the loan players, all the players that's been loaned. We look at who actually has a possibility to play for Chelsea and who probably doesn't and needs to move on. So that's going to be another interesting conversation to have, all the players that's been on loan. So guys, once again, thank you so much. I just had a look. I've officially hit 5,000. So thank you so much. We've sort of achieved that goal in this particular stream. So 5,000 has been achieved. On to the next big things. Hopefully the road for 10K. Here we go. And as I said, smash the like button. RJ's socials are in the description. So go and follow him in Twitter right away, right now. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time, see you.